Is motherhood meant to be a difficult life? Is it now synonymous in our culture where motherhood equals depletion? And now we have created a narrative that it is normal for mothers to be overwhelmed, stressed, anxious, because in order to actually give life to these people that we want to give life to, children, it actually means that we have to be robbed of our own life. There is somehow a belief that there is an exchange of life, that I can only give life only if I give up my life. I guess the question I want to pose to every woman and mother out there is that how are we supposed to continue to breathe life into our children if we feel like we have no life of our own? And so I want to challenge the narrative, the norm, the conversation, and the assumption that motherhood equals a difficult life. Because I don't want to look at my children and say, you're the reason I've stopped dreaming. You're the reason why I am now overwhelmed, stressed, and anxious. You're the reason I feel like I have no life. And now we have a norm of resentment, anxiety, frustration, overwhelm, and we somehow subconsciously think that it's because of children. I'm going to pose a different question where we actually have to go deep into the crisis of motherhood. Let's think about how the world has dramatically shifted in the last 50 years. Okay. Now mothers are not only contributing in their home, but also outside their home. We are actually getting pulled from every different direction, that we now are having to invest in our children's life, somehow find a way to contribute outside our home life, and then, by the way, expected to do it perfectly. The assumption and the false expectations that mothers have today is what's killing us mothers. And here's where the crisis truly, I believe, is happening. How are we prepared to be mothers? How are you preparing yourself? How did you prepare yourself to actually be the mother that you want to be? Because there is this sort of dance and tension where, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be a mom, and I'm kind of nervous about it. Or I don't want to have anything to do with motherhood because I have no idea where to begin. Or all I want to do is to become a mom. And then all of a sudden we become a mom. And then the reality of the lack of preparation of managing our mind, managing our home, managing our emotions, managing our body sits in, and we realize, wait a minute, I have no idea how to do this. And I've always wanted to be a mom. And now it looks to me a lot like stress and resentment, and I can't do it perfectly, January. And it's a hot mess. So we need a new narrative, a heart-to-heart conversation, and to really make sure that we don't hand over our next generation of stress, overwhelmed, depleted, and anxious moms, because that is not sustainable. And as you can see, the data and the stats of women today with anxiety and depression and stress, eating disorder, is absolutely an alarming rate. So you and I cannot afford not to really get to the root of the crisis, so that we don't just take care of the Band-Aid solution of trying to figure out self-care that doesn't get to the crisis of what's really causing us to be depleted. So first of all, we have to understand how the world shifted, which I really, really need mothers to understand, that the world has shifted, because we go through blaming ourselves. We go through shaming ourselves when we don't realize, wait, I haven't been prepared in a world that's now very visual. I'm not prepared in a world where it's more critical, because now we have social media, right? If we don't actually know how to manage critics in a world where we have social media criticizing us, we are going to get pummeled, right? So I'm going to invite you to really dig deep and ask yourself, what are the skills that you are actually learning right now to become the mother that you want to be, where you are breathing and giving life to your children without being robbed of your own life? Because if we aren't actually thinking about growing, then by default, we're living a slow, quiet life of desperation. Here's also what I want you to think about. Coaches, athletes, doctors, lawyers, every profession has years of preparation and continuous education in order to give into their profession. motherhood, somehow the assumption is that we naturally somehow have this motherhood, and then all of a sudden you have women that feel as though this isn't natural, something's wrong with me, or perhaps I have been prepared enough. So the narrative that often mothers have right now is that I'm not good enough. We need to change it to I have not been prepared enough. My name is January Donovan, founder of the Women's School, and I have been training thousands of women in the last 20 years. And I am dedicated to shifting the narrative both for women and mothers so that we don't hand over a next generation where women are doubting themselves, feeling overwhelmed, stressed, and we have to actually really get to the heart of the issues. So I am dedicated to giving women real tools that actually change the way we look at ourselves, the world, and our children, so that we can no longer look at our children with a resentment. Rather, I want to look at my daughter and say, you're the reason I expanded my ability to dream. You're the reason I have so much life to live. You're the reason that I have so much hope and so much joy. You're the reason why I feel like I see the world in a more beautiful place. You're the reason why I'm so grateful. So today I'm going to give you the most critical skills, okay, that I believe mothers need to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And if you haven't been given the skills, chances are there's a drowning factor, because these skills are not just, extra special skills. Their skills are critical for us to actually continue to give life to our children. And what I'm going to do is just talk to you about the most critical skills. But ladies, I want you to think of skills for motherhood like a symphony. The more skill you can add on, the more you actually master that skill set and you add into a symphony, the more beautiful the music is. I want you to think of your home as an opportunity to actually build a new skill, a new instrument to create harmony in your home and symphony. And so, yes, we need training. Yes, we need skill set. And yes, we need to be training like Olympians should train, because this is the Olympics of our lifetime. So first of all, we mothers need to, number one, learn how to dream. Dreaming is a muscle, is an expansion of our imagination. We have been taught that we have to actually dream practically as opposed to vertically, right? So that we only dream of things that we know how to do, as opposed to things that we actually can create through our faculty of imagination. I want mothers to actually start dreaming so brave and boldly and do it so strategically so that now they can teach dreaming to their children. So now we can say, we're both looking and dreaming together. I can look at my daughter and say, honey, I need 2 hours. I'm working on my dream. And one day I'm going to be supporting your dreams. And you get to do the same thing, because we have a God-given mission that's placed in our heart that looks a lot like us giving birth to those dreams and contribution that only us can give. Nobody else can do it. Okay. So we need to learn how to dream practically. Number two, there is no way around managing our mind. Mothers, if we don't know how to manage our mind, we cannot manage our home and we cannot manage our children. Mind management is one of the most crucial skills in the 21st century in a world that's actually bombarding us with information, images, all the different things that's coming at us 100 miles an hour. If we don't actually know how to manage and how to filter managing our mind, then it's going to be a life of constantly having to hustle, and it's constantly anxiety, because what's happening is that there's so many things coming at us, and if we don't know how to manage it, it's going to feel a lot like overwhelm. How do we manage our mind? We need to manage the critics. We need to manage information. We need to actually create boundaries of what we allow our minds to accept and receive. We need to learn how to ask questions. We actually need to learn how to manage and filter through just an amount of information that gets bottlenecked because we don't actually know how to actualize it, right? We don't know how to live it. So if Michael Phelps, the great Olympian, read 1,000 books on how to swim but never got in the pool, he would not win the Olympics. That's the same thing. We read blog after blog, and we go through training or seminars, but it's about training. So we need to manage the way we actually approach training. Second thing is that we need to learn to manage emotion. Now, we have so much incredible information from neuroscience that actually talks and connects directly the connection between every thought and emotion and biological. So everything psychological is biological. What I mean by that is that one of the biggest cause of cancer, if not the biggest cause of cancer, is stress. And stress is something that we work with in our mind. So I want you to picture your thought causing an emotion, right? causing a physical reaction. If you're bitter about someone, then you start to get angry and your body starts to tense up. It's actually that hyper-connected. So this idea that my emotion is not connected to my thought is old way thinking. We need to make sure that there's a marriage between how we manage our emotion by managing our mind. So mothers, if we don't know how to do this, we are drowning. The skill that I want you to consider and imagine is I should be able to look at my 4-year-old and discipline some cranky behavior, and then in a split of a second with transition skills, go to my 8-year-old and say, and be so loving and not have those emotions bleed. That's a mastery of emotional skill with a clarity of how your emotions actually come from our thoughts. So that's skill number 2. Number 3, we need to learn to manage our body, which means we need to learn what gives us energy and what robs us of energy. We need to learn how to actually create a system and a rhythm of life that allows us to be in motion, so that we don't have this idea where I don't have the energy to give to my children. And see, what we eat affects what we think, and what we think affects the way we feel. So it's so integrated. This is why we need to learn and grow as mothers and actually use the information of today for us and not against us. Okay, so we need to learn to manage our body, and we should be as mothers so competent and so aware that postpartum doesn't change our worthiness. That 60 pounds, bigger, smaller, does not make me less significant. And that is an important information to actually understand as a belief system, because if not, we're constantly going to be proving and perfecting so that we can actually prove that we are worthy, right, of becoming the mother if and when we are this weight, this body image, and XYZ. Right? Because that really causes a lot of stress. Number 4, we need to learn how to make decisions quickly and swiftly. When they did a study on all the different leaders in history, they saw all different types of personality, all different types of leadership. The one thing that they had in common was their ability to make a quick decision and do it without changing their mind. So it's actually a decision-making skill is a leadership skill. And yes, we are leaders in our home. Decision-making skill is also a skill that if we don't have it, we are vulnerable to inaction. Inaction means that we're stagnant. Stagnant equals anxiety. So we need to understand this ripple effect. We need to make decisions all day long, right? And in a world that's actually, by the time we get up in the morning, there's like 5 different options for, what to eat. And then there's 30 different options for clothes. And there's 100 different options of what to do. We need to understand that our decision-making skill has a finite amount of energy. It's a skill in itself. And as mothers, we need to be strategic. We can't just afford to say, well, I don't know. We need to be master decision makers, like athletes are masters at their skill set. Mothers doesn't mean we're just mothers. We are Olympians in our motherhood. So yes, absolutely. We need decision-making skill training. And number 5, we need to know and understand boundaries. Now, here's the thing. I have trained thousands of women and mothers and say, Jenny, I've read that boundary book. Yeah. It is not about reading. It's about forming ourselves to take what we've read and actually actualize it, okay? Boundaries is a twofold skill. This is what we teach in the women's school. It's knowing your no, right? Where the line is, and then communicating your no. You can know where your no is and be like, oh, no, thank you. I mean, that was so awful. I didn't like it. But then you don't know how to communicate it effectively, right? You're passive aggressive. So now you're resentful. So we need to be able to communicate our no and our boundaries and say, you know what? I love that opinion, but I actually don't agree with you. And without being resentful, without feeling like, oh my gosh, I feel judged. I just have a different opinion. I love you, but hey, listen, I really don't feel like I need another advice right now. I'm just in a stage right now where I would rather get your encouragement, not another opinion advice. We need to be able to say that without being frustrated, flustered, without feeling as though, oh my gosh, what am I saying? What am I not saying? And not ruminate things in our head, because ruminating things in our head changes the way we show up for our children. Okay. This is why we need to understand connection. And number 6, we need to learn how to manage time. Management of time is really a management of boundaries and a management of activities, because we all have the same 24 hours a day. It's how we manage the activities and boundaries effectively, strategically, so that we can actually amplify our time and not feel like we are robbed of our time. So it's a skill in itself. And if we don't have that skill, we are going to be constantly pulled from every direction and exhausted by the time we lay in bed. So we need to be strategic, intentional, and really masterful at managing our time. CEOs are expected to be really good at managing our time. Why aren't mothers expected? We have this idea that motherhood means that we have to now, right, lower our standards as opposed to elevate our standards. Motherhood means skilling up. It doesn't mean lowering our standards and not knowing, right now, no more shower, you can't even brush your teeth, you can't even go to the gym. These are all, skills that we weren't given to actually prepare us to walk into. But if we did, it would change the way we look at mothers. There would not be depletion crisis. Would it still have the work that it's supposed to have? Absolutely. But it would not have the depletion stigma that we have right now. It still work, just like if you had a job, just like if you're training for the Olympics. It is absolute work, but it's going to be work that we love, and it's going to be work that actually gives us life, not rob us of life. And there's a very important distinction. So I just gave you some of the few critical skill set that today, if we don't have it mastered, we are going to feel like we're drowning. So I am going to, ladies, invite you into a webinar where I'm going to go deeper into the skill set, where I am going to talk about the crisis, where you are, so you can give yourself permission not to be guilty and shamed anymore. And then I'm going to give you real practical tools and scripts. Okay. The Women's School lives in scripts. We need to know what to say and how to say it. 7% is words, 38% body language, and 38% tonality and 55% body language. So we need to know those stats, okay, so that we can actually teach our children. So I'm going to invite you into a webinar where we're going to just dig a little bit deeper and really go one step further in learning, unlearning, and relearning the most vital tools that's going to get us out of depletion and into a life where we feel whole and capable of giving. And here's why you and I need to do it. You and I need to do it because we now have a responsibility to make sure our children are not going to walk into the same stress, anxiety, overwhelm, and frustration when they become mothers. But not only that, if we are anxious and stressed, that gets communicated to our children and they actually wire that into their brain. And I'm going to show you how that is so vital, how we rewire our brain. So it's so important for us mothers to not just do this for ourselves, but also really to do it so that our children are going to be prepared how to live in a world that's dramatically shifted with the skills and the mindset and the tools that they need and the scripts that they need, so that the world doesn't define who they are. Rather, they have defined who they are and they have decided how they're going to show up for the world. So this webinar is going to open your eyes on how you as a mom need to breathe life into yourself, how we need to be growing and maximizing and training, and so that for the sole purpose of being able to breathe life into our children. I am dedicated in really shifting the narrative of mothers and women today. I believe it is time for us to really do what we can do to make sure that the next generation is not suffering the same overwhelm and stress and anxiety, where now they are afraid to be mothers. They automatically assume that it's a difficult life, that they automatically assume that it is a burden to be able to give life because it means an exchange of their own life. This webinar will change your life as it has thousands of women. This webinar will redefine the way you look at your future and the way you look at your children and the way you look at yourself. I believe that we have an immense responsibility as women and mothers to be part of the shift of the next generation. This webinar will awaken you to how the world has shifted. It is real, it is raw, and it is from a mother of 7 children, one at one point, 4 under 4, and now 3 under 4, and also a woman who's dedicated to have a voice outside the world and also an entrepreneur. I believe that we don't have to do it all, but we can have it all. My name is January Donovan, founder of the Women's School, inviting you to the beginning of a new journey that's going to change and shape the next generation of mothers, beginning with you.